Hey everybody, today I'm taking a look at 3 logical deduction games. The games I'm looking at are Break the Code by Yellow, we have Tiwanaku by Sit Down Games, and we're also going to be taking a look at ArcheOlogic by Ludonaut. Now before I get started on my reviews of these 3 titles, I want to give a shout out to the show sponsor KIENDA.co.uk, who are my go-to online retailer, and if you use the link in the show notes or the QR code, then you can get 5% off your first order. Okay, so the first game I'm taking a look at here is ArcheOlogic. This is a 1 to 4 player game, takes around 40 minutes to play on average. Now the idea of this deduction game is that you are trying to place these tiles, I think there's 6 tiles, in the exact right arrangement on your little player sheets here. So you've got kind of a 5 by 5 grid, A to E, 1 to 5, and you're basically trying to deduce the orientation through the use of this pretty cool contraption that comes with the game. So each scenario comes with one of these kind of little disc things, and what you're trying to do is that you're going to ask a question to the game, essentially. So you could say, how many of, let's say, these symbols here, these traps, are on a particular line or column. And what you're going to do is you're going to have a look at that line or column by arranging the number. So let's say it's the number 3 I want to look at. I'm going to put it onto the sheet like so, put this on the traps question, and then through the holes peering through the sheet, it will show you which is on that line. So in this one, you're going to have one of these circle traps and one of these triangle traps if it shows up on this on the camera. But there's lots of different questions you can ask. You can ask how many empty spaces are going to be on that line or column, how many different tiles, again, how many traps, how many from one of the particular shapes are on that line or column. But there's an additional twist on this game where whatever you ask, the game will basically charge you a different amount of time through this time track system. So think of something like patchwork, where the more detailed question you want to ask, the more time it's going to take, and you do not get another turn until you are right at the back of that time track. So sometimes asking a question that's going to be very pertinent to you can mean that you're not going to get another turn for quite some time. Now, as you'd expect, and with all these 3 games, it can be a bit of a brain burner. I'm not the best at deduction games, but I do enjoy them, and I'm always fascinated about how well put together and constructed they are, because there's no margin for error in these games because they are perfect information. But I think that time track system mixed with deduction is actually a very nice hybrid that's been used before in games like the Search for Planet X. This one has some similarities to that, and again uses that time track system to a really high standard. And again, I think those 2 mechanisms work hand in hand really well. Now, one thing I really do like about this game is the fact that these tiles are in fixed shapes, which means you actually have another layer to the deduction, because sometimes you can work things out on the back of other information simply through this spatial element on the board, which is quite nice. So, if you know 4 of the squares on a line, and you know for a fact that there's another symbol on it, there might only be one tile where that symbol can possibly fit in the grid. So you can, again, just by another route of deduction, you can work that out. So the deduction side of this game is really interesting. It works extremely well, and again, that time track works well too. Now, my only issue with this game is the fact that there is next to no player interaction in it. So apart from obviously the race to find the answer, which is again the correct orientation of those tiles on your player sheet, and that time track system where sometimes you can manipulate it to get back-to-back turns, etc. When you're asking the question using this device, you are not showing the answer to anybody else. So with most deduction games, normally you'll give a little piece of information when it's not even your turn. You'll get a little kind of nugget of information that you can kind of hold in your back pocket. And this one, if you're not asking the question yourself, you're getting no new information, meaning that you can go quite some time without actually getting any information, and you can end up just kind of twiddling your thumbs, not doing much. Now, the game is brain burnery enough for you to kind of have your head down in your sheet and try to work things out, ready for your next question. So it's not as big of an issue as I first thought, but it is there, and I generally prefer it. when you at least get, again, scraps of information, even if it's not optimal when it's not your turn. So I like this one. I think it works well, as deduction games do, but I think because of the spoils of deduction games we have out there with so many, and that idea that there is pretty much no interaction does hurt it a bit for me. And yeah, so that's kind of a bit of a dampening effect on my overall review of this one. Again, the deduction side is pretty damn excellent, but that lack of interaction does hurt the game quite significantly, meaning that I'd put it around a 6, maybe a 6.5 out of 10, because the gameplay is solid. The next game I'm talking about here is Break the Code. 2 to 4 players, takes around 15 minutes to play on average. Now, Break the Code is a lot more familiar to me to the classic logical deduction games, thinking games such as Sleuth, and in fact I think this game has quite a lot of crossover to a game like Sleuth. Now, depending on the player count, you're going to have different objectives in this one. So in a 2-player game, you're trying to work out the code behind your opponent's kind of visor here. And in a 3 or 4-player game, you're trying to work out the number tokens or the code that is kind of in the middle and has not been selected by any other player. Now, at the start of the game, you're going to get 5 of these number tokens, which come in black and white in duplicate. So you've got like a 2 black and a 2 white, and a 3 black and a 3 white. And the 5s come in a completely different colour. And when you take these tokens, you're going to put them in numerical order from low to high. And on your turn, you are going to select one of these pre-selected questions from the centre. So again, much like Sleuth, you do not have free reign to ask what you want to ask. You are somewhat restricted by the tokens or the cards questions available at that time. And these questions can be things such as, where do you have consecutive numbers? Whereabouts is your 4 in the arrangement, and so on. And of course, as you're drip-fed this information, you start to build up a picture about what your opponents have. And unlike ArcheOlogic, you are, at least from my memory, you are discovering this information no matter whose turn it is. So you're always getting information at all times, which is, again, a nice touch that I prefer to a game like ArcheOlogic. Now, if you're familiar with deduction games, again, like Sleuth, that's pretty much what this consists of. The only difference being the fact that what you're trying to discover is that arrangement of numbers and using that extra layer of the numerical order, etc. But I suppose the strength of this game more than anything is how fast and punchy it is. If you remember, I mentioned this game was 15 minutes long. If you're incompetent like I am, it might be a little bit longer than that, but it certainly doesn't outstay its welcome. Well, at least for me, when I get into playing this game, I'm almost resigned to the fact that I am going to be pulling my hair out, and I'm really struggling to work out the code because, again, I find it quite stressful, and I'm not the best at deduction games. But it is enjoyable, and of course it is satisfying when you end up pulling off or working out what that code is. And for a very small box game, very fast and affordable, and definitely one that's flown under the radar, Break the Code is certainly one to look at if you are a fan of deduction games. And if I had to rate this one, I would say give it about a 6.5 out of 10. And the final game I'm talking about today is Tiwanaku. This one is a 1 to 4 player game, takes around 60 minutes to play on average. Now, the method of deduction in this game is different to the other two that I've talked about, and that's because it takes place on a communal board. And this game has a lot of similarities to the classic game Minesweeper, where you are traversing this board and discovering different terrain types. Now, depending on the kind of size of that attached terrain type, you know for a fact that there's going to be different types of tokens on there. So in a 5-sized group of terrain like this mountain area here, there's going to be a 1 token in there, there's going to be a 2 token, a 3 token, a 4 token, and a 5 token. There's never any duplicates. If there was a, say, 2 surface area of terrain, there's going to be a 1 token and a 2 token, and so on. And the way that the deduction is worked out here is that no token can be next to or adjacent to one of the same. So, for example, you can see there's a big 4 token here. Any of the surrounding squares around it cannot be a 4. And of course, as more information is revealed, you can compile that together and work out which the remaining terrain types are. Now, there's 2 sort of different token types are. Now, there's two methods of gaining points in this game. In fact, there's three. The first of which is actually discovering the terrain in the first place, which is where you're going to be using your meeples to travel around the map. And when you bump into an empty space, basically, you are going to reveal which type of terrain that is by using this very cool contraption, which I've been too lazy to get out and show you, but it works very well. Be assured on that. And depending on the terrain that you've revealed, you're going to populate the board, and you're also going to go up this diversity track here, which means that when you discover a certain type of terrain, you're going to go up on that particular track, and for every different terrain type on that road that you've just gone onto, you're going to get a point for. So sometimes you're actually not incentivized to keep on finding the same terrain because you're going to run away with one type and not keep getting those kind of compounded points. Whereas if you spread yourself thin, you can keep discovering one of each type and keep getting like 2, 3, 4 points per time, which can definitely be a difference maker in this game. And I've had games that have proven that. Now, the second way you actually find or get points is kind of the main point of the game, which is the deduction part, which is where you can guess which of the tokens are on that particular tile. Again, using that logical deduction of no tokens being adjacent to other tokens and the size of the terrain itself. And what I like is that you can use your meeples, arrange them all as you see fit, and then take as many guesses as you want. But there is a bit of a risk to this one, because if you are unsuccessful with your guesses, you're going to lose the amount of points equal to the points you would have gotten by guessing correctly. So if you're guessing for a 4-point token, you'll get 4 points. But again, if you're wrong, you will lose 4 points. Now, there's a third way of getting points, and that is where each time you discover a particular or a specific tile, a token, you will get another token representing that. And you're basically trying to collect sets of these up and cash them in when you have all 5, essentially, to get a big chunk of points there. But the twist is that you cannot have duplicates of the same type, because say I discovered a 1 and then I discovered another 1, I can only ever have 1 token of that type at a time. So therefore I've wasted that opportunity to collect that second 1 token. So again, you've got a little bit of a storage system here where you want to build them up, but not waste collecting duplicates, because again, that's just points you've thrown away. Now, what I do like about this game is that hybrid of the board presence mixed with the deduction element to it, because you can do quite a few little twists here with the game by blocking people off. You can reserve spots because you cannot actually move on to spaces where other players are. So, if you're sat on a high point region or space that you've worked out, you can sit there knowing that nobody else can jump in there and steal it from you, and so on. So you do have that, again, that's nice spatial awareness and puzzly style of thing of not only the deduction, but the actual, again, blocking people, reserving your spaces, coming on at the right places, and even as the game progresses, it has a good way to keep the game moving at a decent pace by when more and more of these tokens are discovered, you can travel through them or traverse through them as if that space was empty. So you can basically travel through them really quickly and not have to spend your time just slowly plodding along, going to a new space. Now, I really like the gameplay of this one. Again, it's very polished, quite a refined game. Now, my biggest issue with it is the fact that a lot of the time you are reliant, or you are waiting for your opponent to slip up or to take a bit of a gamble and guess something so that more information is available. And as soon as one piece of information is available, then there's normally a fallout and a kind of a ripple effect where a bunch of other information is available as well. And sometimes it becomes a bit of a game of chicken, and it can become a bit stagnant as people are waiting for someone to take that punt. So I did find it could drag its heels a little bit at a time if that is the board state at the time. And sometimes, because the board is quite large, especially if you're playing with the long version of the game, it can feel like, even though you've waited a bit and then you've had a whole bunch of information revealed here, the other side of the map is still relatively unexplored and you didn't have much information there. So it can be a little bit start-stop. But there is some pressure here, and sometimes you are forced to make these mistakes, because if you are, say, running away with it in terms of points, you can actually just start exploring the board and try to bring the game to an end, because as soon as that last terrain type is revealed and placed on the board, then the game will, or the game end is triggered. So, you know, sometimes you are forced to take those gambles, and sometimes they'll pay off, sometimes they won't pay off, but yeah, you have to be prepared to roll with the punches at times and take those educated guesses. But the game is a lot of fun. Again, it feels different and distinct to a lot of other deduction games. But again, I think it can sometimes drag its heels, not just in terms of that gameplay and hoping people make mistakes, but also in the fact that I think it does, at least in my experience, it has gone beyond the stated time of 60 minutes on the box. But that might just be my game group. I'm not sure. Maybe we're slow at working these things out. But that's what I have found in each time I've played this game. Also, if you do want to play a game tons and tons of times, which I generally don't, and there are, I think, only 20 scenarios in the game box, so you're going to have to find a way to get more scenarios. I'm sure the company will come out with them, or there might be an app or something, but bear that in mind. Now, initially, I did give this game a 7 out of 10 in terms of my latest ranking video. Having played it some more, I might just creep it under that because of that kind of Mexican standoff feel at times. It just can feel a little bit stagnant. But I do enjoy it. I think it's a very well designed game. You know, it's very polished, and I do enjoy it a lot, and it feels distinct, which is quite, you know, quite an appraisal in such a saturated genre. But I think it's going to be an acquired taste. But I certainly play it again, and I do, you know, give it a soft recommendation. So that is Tiwanaku. Again, you're looking at a 6.75, maybe a 7 out of 10 on a good day. So there we have it. That concludes the video. I enjoyed talking about these three deduction games. You know, similarities between them, but also some quite distinct differences as well. You've got the punchiness of Break the Code. You've got the brain burniness of ArcheOlogic, but a little bit too multiplayer solitaire for me. And you've got that Minesweeper effect of Tiwanaku, but with that slight weakness of sometimes being reliant on an opponent to take a gamble or take a risk just to keep the game moving along and feeling exciting. Now, if you have enjoyed the video, please be sure to hit like and subscribe to my channel and check my other content too. But for everybody else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye bye.